Welcome back to SheCan, where role models share their insights, their stories, their lessons learned to make life easier for all the rest of us to navigate our ups and downs. And I'm really excited to talk to Amanda Johnston today. Amanda, welcome to SheCan. You're an educational consultant, curator, and chief design officer at the Sustainable Angle and the Future Fabrics Expo, which is so impressive. I've been there this year and it's incredible. The Sustainable Angle is a not-for-profit organization initiating and supporting projects with a focus on sustainability in fashion and textiles, food, and agriculture. You source, you research, you educate, and you run the Future Fabrics Expo every single year, which is the largest dedicated showcase of innovative and sustainable material solutions. It has a huge number of exhibitors, textile speakers, innovators, workshops, and I was so impressed. Being there again today, I think I've been there when it started 15 years ago, and I went again this year, and it was really, truly impressive what you've built. Your sponsors are LVMH, the Lowndes Foundation, Canopy, Fashion for Good. You also co-authored 2 books, Fabric for Fashion and Fabric for Fashion, the Swatch Book. You also teach at the London College of Fashion. Amanda, tell us a bit more about your journey, your story, and those pivotal points that led you to where you are today.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for having me. And it's wonderful to have an opportunity to reflect back and think about everything. As you said, you just thankfully did an amazing rundown of everything that we've achieved over the past 15 years. So thank you for that. So yeah, I guess if I reflect back and I think about the beginnings, so Nina Morenzi founded the Sustainable Angle as a not-for-profit. And that was the driving force, was really to try to change hearts, minds, and practice within the fashion industry and related industries as well. So we find we're speaking to all industries really that intersect, make products with materials, but also food and agriculture, as you mentioned, because of course they have a relationship as well. So I was first introduced to Nina and joined her the year after she founded Sustainable Angle. And we decided the way that we needed to change hearts, minds, and practice was we need to bring a material showcase to them that let them understand material impacts and what they needed to do to change, so that we're looking for future-proofing businesses. We all know about the critical imperative of climate change, biodiversity loss, which of course our raw material dependencies are utterly connected to. And so this was really the driving mission and remains so to this day. And as we've evolved, so first expo in 2011, as we've evolved and we built it up from a very small showcase that was just in an academic situation. So thank you to London College of Fashion for that. And I met Nina actually through London College of Fashion contacts. And I had just published my first book. There's been several iterations of the book that you mentioned. She'd already had it, and an academic at LCF said, "Oh, you must meet Amanda." So we got together and started the first Future Fabrics Expo, which of course has to be run as a business entity. But as I've said before, when we were talking earlier, really the bedrock, the backbone of what we do is the education. It is utterly important. So we're not a regular trade show in that respect. We are educating, informing, inspiring the industry so they get why they need to change, outlining history of materials, the future of where we should go with materials. All of this we put extraordinary amount of effort and research into with the help of our amazing team at Sustainable Angle. So, it's super interesting work, and it's quite far away from where I began. So my back history is in design. I trained as a designer. I worked in the industry for decades. I worked all around the world and learned a lot of things and had a lot of great experiences. And then just around the time that the free trade agreement kicked in, globalization began to happen. And so that speeding up of production, overproducing stock, which we're still trapped in. started to kick in, because of course you could make the offshoring manufacture just went crazy. And I fell out of love with the industry. And I sort of took a step back and I said, I don't really feel that I'm best placed just being responsible for churning product out. And you were starting to see the advent of, more and more negative practices, both ecologically and socially. So I stepped back and I went into education. And that was where I first learned about sustainability. So that would have been over 20 years ago, actually. I went into education and worked with the incredible Dilys Williams, who I'd actually worked with in industry as a designer. She would stepped into education as well and had called me into her course. And we worked together on embedding sustainability in the curriculum. And then she opened the Centre for Sustainable Fashion at LCF. And of course, Nina had interviewed Dilys, and it was Dilys that connected us. So that's a really lovely, lovely story. And I thought this is actually, the more that we developed the expos over years, we could feel there was a growing need, but the fashion industry needed a push, a big push. And it just became so fascinating to me. And I'm still, here we are, doing it 15 years later, building it up as much as possible with a mission to communicate and disseminate as far and wide as we can around the world, to both ecological and social impacts. It's hard to join the dots because sustainability is complex. It's really complex. Yeah. So I think part of our job is to demystify, to read all the reports, to understand what's going on, to understand where things are going, and be able to communicate the main issues as clearly and beautifully as possible. We put an inordinate amount of work into the visual, because I'm a designer. I know if you don't get designers with that, they won't listen to you. So we have to think about information. And so as a creative, I feel I'm kind of well placed to go, okay, you've got to get a creative at hello. You've got to get their attention. We do that through academic content, but delivered in a very visually accessible way. So we put a lot of effort into that and draw together, as you have seen, Stephanie, coming to the expo, the best suppliers in the world that genuinely are trying to produce materials at the best practice level they can achieve within their fiber category. So yeah, it's a lot.
Amanda, I want you to show off, because the Future Fabrics Expo, people won't understand otherwise what we're talking about if they haven't been there. It's unbelievably impressive. Tell us how many exhibitors you have, how many different new, incredible innovators you have, 80 talks, you've got workshops. I mean, it's unbelievably inspiring to walk in there, and visually absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. As I said, to me, I knew you cannot captivate the fashion industry without getting that right. I have this thing where when somebody walks in the room who maybe doesn't know us, I want them to go, wow, this is cool. I want to be part of this. So then I've hooked them, right? You get them at hello. That's the first thing. And then you can lead them into these amazing stories, information, narratives that will change the way people see things. That's a big, big part of what we do. So in answer to your question, we and the team, we draw together, we've got around over 250 global suppliers within our collection. So our library, which just takes an inordinate amount of effort to draw together, numbers around 6,000 materials at any one time. Now, 4,000 of these sit on our virtual expo. So again, a huge investment to make sure that we connect a lot of those material qualities to desk-based research so we can reach more people with all of the educational information that you see on the cards in real life. That's really crucial, because if you're just looking at the face of a material, the only way you're reading it as a creative is color, texture, feel, how do I like, and that's it. Weight, width, price, that's the usual amount of information that most of the industry will give you when you're looking at materials. as you know, you've been to the expo, we invest an extraordinary amount of time and effort into giving the full rundown about why we believe this supplier is a best practice supplier, and then the material detail as well. So we've done all the, I mean, Nina likes to say as well, we've done all the hard work and given it to the fashion industry on a silver platter. We have presented it to go, we've enabled you to make better choices and best choices. So yes, that's a big part of what we do. When the expo is on, which obviously you visited this year, and we have all of our suppliers, so we've had about 120 separate suppliers, including our material curation as well. It would have been more than 10,000 materials in the whole building.
Yeah.
Plus, as you said, those amazing partners, NGOs that are communicating, all their projects around the world, supported by, we're supported by incredible organizations you mentioned earlier, sort of LVMH, Parley for the Oceans, Canopy, the Forest NGO, Louders Foundation, and they have incredible projects that they use the expo as a platform to communicate those, disseminate the information around them so that people can understand and learn from them. And then we have, as you mentioned, very importantly, the seminar series, which amplifies the themes that are really important around protecting ecosystems, biodiversity, and communities. So we have a series, six per day seminars, amplifying all those themes that are throughout the rest of the expo. We have amazing speakers as well. Yeah. I'm sure you got to see a couple of them.
I did, yes.
Yep.
And I interviewed some of them as well then afterwards.
Amazing.
Amanda, I'm wondering, if you look back over the past 15 years, what do you feel are your biggest lessons learned that you can share with us today? Those main takeaways that are really important for people to know.
I think, just about my learning and trying to do that communication and education, as I've said before, is that it always surprises me how long it can take and how much repetition of the same themes and the same messages that you need to do. We live in a very communication heavy world right now, and I think it's getting even more so. So trying to filter information and deliver a nutshell the key things is something that never ceases to amaze me, how much you have to keep reiterating. Even though you feel, and Nina and I used to have this joke actually, where one of my favorite books is The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, because it really helps you to understand a human behavior and kind of trends in culture and stuff like that. I'm constantly, it's a quite old book now, but constantly recommending it to my students. And I sort of said, each time we do an expo, it's like we felt like the industry wasn't waking up. At the first few years, we felt like we were preaching only to the converted. They followed us because they were switched on from, a sustainability perspective. And we thought, well, we can't speak in an echo chamber. We need to be spreading our influences. We need to grow and we need to spread that influence and disseminate globally as much as possible. And I just think that that is quite interesting, that the tipping point, I kept saying to Nina, the tipping point is going to come this year. The tipping point is going to come this year, where you feel that the wider fashion culture and other industries have started to wake up. Now, that happened in 2020. We used to hold our expos in January then. And at the end of January, Nina was saying unwittingly, we were probably contributing to the spreading of COVID without knowing it at that expo, because it was jam-packed. Like there were queues around the block. We couldn't believe it. So we were like, yay, the tipping point's come. The fashion industry's woken up. And now we're going to find it a lot easier to drive that change that is obviously a big driving force of our mission. And there were also, very interestingly, Nina and I looking at each other going, there's lots of suits walking around in this show. So the sort of investment community had woken up and word had got around. Obviously some of them, definitely invited by Nina and her contacts, but it was quite a different feeling. There were obviously the fashion industry definitely woken up, but there was also this element as well. So we were so pleased. And then of course, COVID came and shut us down.
Yeah.
But not completely. We thought we were going to have to furlough most of the team, and we can't. Nina was like, no, we got to keep going. And what was really interesting is we had never been as busy during COVID as we had. We were just, so it was all the sustainability teams that they put their sustainability targets in place, and now they got to start meeting them, even though physical retail had shut down. So we got really interestingly so busy, and we pivoted to digital like everybody else had to do. We were sending packages of materials, and then we were doing presentations online with them color coded and number coded to the package that we just FedEx to them. So that was super, super interesting. That the hunger to fulfill those and the need to fulfill those sustainability goals within fashion companies had started to bite. So that was a real learning experience. And yeah, I just think that what is critical to our work is that just constant need to reinforce and keep communicating to the industry and keep inspiring them and getting like, it's not the same old stuff. We are constantly refreshing our materials through our suppliers. That takes an inordinate amount of work, as I said before, both the physical collection of 6,000 materials, the digital collection of 4,000 materials to enable anybody to be able to source sustainable materials and understand why they're sustainable. That's really, really important.
Amanda, and the amazing thing, which it felt to me, is that wasn't just for the fashion industry. It really has taken over into home interiors, home accessories. And that I found fascinating because that's another area. And of course, food and agriculture, that's an area where it becomes sort of a bigger thing, right? And what you said earlier, that we have to reiterate info again and again and again, and every year find new words to describe the same things. It is mind-boggling, and it is the same for all of us. We have to talk about how we aren't balanced as a society. We live in a patriarchal system, and how we as women still have to keep talking about it. And actually, everyone should talk about it, but because it's more about us, we have to keep talking about it. So I am sitting in the exact same boat. I'm wondering and this is a question I ask myself all the time, and I've got 3 children, and they live in this super connected world, but I always think this education hasn't gone far enough. How can each one of us be better partners and co-creators of our future? How do you teach your students at the London College of Fashion how each one of them has to make a difference? Because it's not really about having a choice anymore. It's really important that each one of us understands we gotta change how we buy and consume.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, totally. I mean, my students there, undergraduate and postgraduate students as well. So, we can also have opinions about we should really start it way earlier in the curriculum, like when children in nursery school. But the students that I'm speaking to, many of them tend to be already quite sustainably motivated through their own belief system and their own emotions about what they think is right. There's sort of like, I'm so surprised so many fashion students like very committed vegans. They got onto that bandwagon, and I'm absolutely perfect choices for them when they consider the world at large. So they tend to already be a bit more switched on. But for those that aren't, because I know we live in a world where there's sustainability kind of compassion fatigue going on at the same time.
Definitely.
There was a lot of data coming out a few years ago about how, Gen Z, etc., 69% of them were making purchases based purely on sustainability, and they would only follow brands that were based. So, of course, when they're asked a questionnaire, they were seeing 69% or whatever it was published a few years ago, but it didn't actually translate to real figures at the point of sale. So it's that thing where we all say we want to see ourselves as very positive people in the world, but actually when it comes to it, the prize matters more. Anyway, that's an aside, but I would say that it's so nuanced and so complex, sustainability, that there are different kind of, I guess, tribes of younger people that prioritize different things. I will have students that are completely passionate about animal ethics, but yet they're buying plastic shoes and bags, and they don't. So joining the dots up there and not understanding that those choices around petrochemicals are actually damaging wildlife and the very animals that you love. So those very complex kind of connections are not terribly well understood. But in answer to your question about how I would start getting my students to think about it if they weren't already switched on, is to get them to think really about their place as a responsible creative, because they're going to be making things. They are going to be giving birth to products and putting them out into the world. And what, from a sort of bigger picture perspective, is their responsibility as a designer. And they're not going to be able to, save the world with one collection, obviously.
No. Yeah.
But really, you can switch them on to kind of bigger picture thinking, and then micro thinking. We work our way down to micro thinking as well, and get them to think really about materials is a great place to start. That's why we do what we do. Materials really, really matter when it comes to impacts. And if students know that just their choices that they're making from material perspective can actually have a massive impact, it's around 80 to 90% of a product's impact is held in the material choices and the R&D and the manufacturing choices. Materials are manufactured together. And that's mind-blowing. So you can make massive positive changes just by understanding that, and your supply chains and your materials. You can be straight away in a position where you're making much, much more positive choices. So that's really obviously where we're coming from as an organization. I'm coming from as an educator, but of course, bigger picture context is also very important. It isn't only about materials, but they're a very significant part. And they often get quite excited when I get them to design their own kind of systems thinking, basically. Yeah. Start thinking about systems, not just swapping out one material for another. That's not a bad place to start, but it's not really addressing the whole sort of understanding and pointing out to them without being doom and gloom that because of our raw material dependencies and our extractive ways of taking materials and then wasting them straight away, we are literally in peril by doing that. So we have to think in circular ways, regenerative and circular ways. And that makes common sense to anybody.
Definitely.
And of course, the relationship between materials and food agriculture is like this. And lots of students don't understand that either. Having a cash crop and a subsistence crop in rotation in many parts of the world, get that wrong, and you have terrible knock-on effects. So I find all of that really interesting. Nina's far more of an expert in that area than I am, but I find that just like a complete revelation. Yeah. So do students. They don't think about their materials in those terms, So, yeah, it's
all about education, that's for sure.
Yes.
And you have just educated
Yes.
me again, because materials and manufacturing is 80 to 90%. That I didn't know, and that I find fascinating.
So, yeah, the consumer plays a part. There's been a lot on that. So, yes, they do. But this is a way of getting the creatives to think, oh, my goodness, my responsibility, is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you feel, Amanda, is the low-hanging fruit? How can we potentially, make changes a bit faster?
You mean us as just general population consumers? Well, we're all fashion consumers, aren't we? So yeah, I think there's been a lot of discourse, around, yes, there's impacts that we've just spoken about, but also when you interacting with product, which we all do consistently. And I think, fashion is perceived as frivolous, but it's hugely important from a point of view of world resources and whole communities, dependent on it. And as human beings, it's the most powerful way that we have of communicating with each other. out in the world, isn't it? It's we advertise who we are through how the choices that we make in our dress codes. And so I would say it is very important, the consumer, to think about, yes, your relationship to these huge mountains of clothes that we've seen dumped in Accra in Ghana, and even in the Atacama Desert. That was like, how did they get there? I mean, incredible. And even by the Himalayan mountains, we're seeing just huge mountains of clothes. So we're realizing there's a systemic thing. The material issue is one thing when you created the product. Then there's how it's dealt with in that old industrial revolution: take, make, waste, dump it, and then we'll just speed up and we'll make more. I was in the House of Lords the other day for a circular economy roundtable. And of course, there are statistics coming out, but from lots of organizations, that we are overproducing so much that actually, I think it's something in the region of around 20, or where are we, if I can remember correctly, there's very little. I think it's only about 20% of garments or something are actually sold at full price. And then there's a massive wastage of garments. So we're producing like crazy, stuffing it, and then 40% of what's produced is being sold off price. And then, the rest of it is being dumped. So when you look at this is actual insanity, right? And it's been set in motion by mass manufacture that kicked off in the Industrial Revolution, and then out the other end, these mountains that we are now struggling to cope with. So I think from a consumer perspective, it's about them waking up to that, to stop, even though clothes have become very, very cheap because of globalization, people will buy 3 t-shirts when they only need one, because it's buy 2 and we'll give you one for free. Or this t-shirt's £3.50. And a sandwich costs £3.50. It doesn't take a genius to work out that how does that work? That can't be. Well, people are suffering back throughout the supply chain when things are that cheap, but still we keep on buying it. So consumers been trained, and I think there are moves to to create circular models within clothes we already have. It's become now much more trendy to be circulating your clothes, whether it's through, take back, sharing schemes. Vinted, apparently, Vinted is now the #1 sales platform in France for selling clothes. Amazing. I was staggered by that. Yeah, so it shows you there's been a big cultural shift, and that's really positive, because it's people recognizing we have a glut, we have too much, we're paying too little for it. That cannot support the livelihoods of people at all. It's just not possible. And so then there's the consumer is actually going, well, I don't want the same thing everybody else has got, and I can have fun shopping through whatever it is, Vinted or exchange clothing clubs or whatever it is. Or most of the big brands now have take back their own brand pieces and will sell them on their online platform. It doesn't represent a big revenue stream to them, but it shows that actually it's culturally relevant. Do you see what I mean? So I think things are shifting, but we're still making mountains of clothes that don't get sold at full price, have to go somewhere. We are at a crisis point with that, as many parts of the world that are our dumping grounds will attest to.
We forget about the power we have as consumers to put pressure on companies. This is the thing that I think we always forget. And we live in very divided times, right? And we see lots of protesting going on around the world. We see Nepal has just toppled a government. Young people toppled a government. It is possible to put pressure on companies that we feel are not going with the times that we need to be going with the program, right? We need to change the ways we produce, and we all know it. And so we have the power to decide where we put our dollars. Let's put it this way.
That's very, very true. And I think there was a wonderful quote, actually, and I'll try and remember the book. Oh, the book is Fiber Shed. and I remember the author's name in a minute. It's amazing because it's all about those local systems and regenerative farming systems. And the author said, you can vote for the agriculture and the life you want with your dollar. You know, you can put your money to something that you believe is a positive thing. You're actually volunteering to support with your pocket. And I think that's, yes, you're absolutely right. There's nothing more persuasive than that. But there's often tribes of fashion consumers that need educating around that, you know. And I think many people that do come to the expo, they're ready for change. They understand why they're going. It's not just a regular suppliers show. It's something absolutely different. If you've ever trudged around a regular trade show, you will feel it instantaneously. But yeah, it's slightly speaking to the converted or the receptive, I should say, the receptive.
Definitely.
That's why they've come to our door. And we also need to be speaking to those that don't have a clue. That's really important too, you know, or even those people that don't believe it's important. We still got to speak to them as well.
Amanda, and you do that very well. So in order for your work to continue the way it is going right now, which is very impactful, and the Future Fabrics Fair is an incredible event that I want everyone to look out for 2026, you need to get sponsorship. And I know that you're on a fundraising drive now. You need the education part of the sustainable angle, and the Future Fabrics Fair is, as we were talking about over the past half hour, is critical. Tell us a little bit more about how people can contribute and that you really need to find big corporate sponsors.
Yes, I mean, it's a critical part really of helping us to do the work that we do, because as I said to you before, we are not a typical trade show by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. And it's really balancing, in order for us to keep doing what we do, you know, the commercial elements of Future Fabrics Expo with those amazing sponsors that we spoke about earlier. So Loudest Foundation, LVMH's sustainability initiatives, Canopy, the NGO Fashion for Good, Parley for the Oceans as well. So all of these organizations are really critical, and we are always looking out for new sponsors. And so around, you know, we have actually, if anybody wants to look at on our website as well. So sponsorship can start at 50K. Yeah. Or in individual amounts. We have a donate button where somebody wants to support our educational output, which, by the way, is all completely open source. And I encourage everybody. I make everything so it's easy to photograph on a phone. You know, the proportions are meant to be captured on a phone, so people will collect the information that they see over years and refer back to it. So we're essentially, in a way, I would say what we're doing is en masse publishing. Do you see what I mean? But we publish first in real life.
Yeah.
And this information, by the way, you know, we don't produce it in a book or anything because it's constantly being renewed. But at an expo, it's essentially like a real life publishing situation. So if anybody wants to donate to our work, they can do that through the donate button on our website. And you know, we're very open, obviously, to speak to any organisations that want to be listed as one of our sponsors, and you'll be joining some amazing organisations in that. So yes, I mean, it's an absolute critical part of our work, that element, because sustainable angle can't function without those donations and sponsorships.
Exactly. It's a non-for-profit. So anyone's listening, please go on the website, check them out, talk to your friends about it. If you know any company that might be interested, we want you to get in touch with Amanda or Nina Marenzi. Amanda, what are your plans and goals? What does the end of this year look like? Next year, are there new things coming to the Future Fabrics Expo?
Absolutely.
Tickle us a little bit.
I will tickle you with some exciting things. So I think I mentioned earlier that dissemination and wider communication was always a drive because you ain't going to change much just talking to a small room. So wherever we've been able to, we're pushing to do that. So we've started exploring a partnership with Performance Days, Munich-based showcase, and actually fabric agency, who they license out the Performance Days concept, which is all focused at a hugely growing kind of section of what we all wear, let's face it, performance wear, active wear, athleisure, so it's that whole spectrum that kind of goes from high performance through to underwear, bodywear, your yoga wear, everything. And also these materials are infiltrating into our fashion day and night kind of menu, right? We're all doing that.
Absolutely.
We put a pair of leggings on with a dress over the top. So because we figured it's such an important category to influence, and most of these materials that we call high performance and your stretchy leggings and the stuff you wear to yoga are made out of petrochemicals. So if we are we need to be the Trojan horse within these sorts of shows and start having these conversations and saying this material innovation that is coming to enable us to move away from petrochemicals. Let's look at more kind of advanced recycling, not just recycling plastic bottles, by the way, because that's a little counterintuitive, although that's where we are right now in the industry, recycling PET bottles to make polyester leggings. And sometimes the suppliers go, oh, that's great, I've done that. And I'm like, well, that's the lowest hanging fruit, by the way, recycling a PET bottle. It's not where we want to get to. So we are exploring this partnership. You may remember when you came into the first hall, there was a big information poster around the world of certifications and EU legislation. And that was in partnership with Performance Days. So this summer I did with another team member, did a showcase of innovations purely, dropped into the Performance Days Functional Fabric Fair in New York. And then we came back for a week, and then we went again to Shanghai and dropped the same showcase into the Shanghai Functional Textiles Fair. And then we will go to Munich at the end of October, and we will again, state our sort of exploratory partnership that we've got going with them. So that's the mission that I described before about extending our reach, speaking to other sections of the market that might not be as switched on, that might not be as receptive to material innovation. And where's our next thing that we've got to do? Don't rest on our recycled PET, because this is not a material world that is good for any of us. So yeah, that's our mission at the moment, is to drive more global communication, and it's very exciting. Yeah,
super exciting, Amanda. You parachute into these different areas, and yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. So, Amanda, what takeaways do you want our listeners to have from your story and your insights and your purpose?
well, I would say that the things that I mentioned above were about sort of personal, fashion communication, is just really think about what we're buying, what we need, etc. But I would also just really, really like to drive home again, I suppose, how absolutely critical our engagement with our material world is through all industries. You mentioned earlier, it isn't just about the clothes we wear. It's what we wrap ourselves in. It's what we're sitting in. It's what we're sitting on. So we're delving into material categories now because the visitors have demanded it for pan materiality. And you would, just when you sit down on your sofa, you probably have no clue about the materiality inside your sofa. You may know what it's covered with, but you've no idea what it's built of, which is, more often than not, highly toxic, unless it's a beautiful old vintage sofa that was made a couple of 100 years ago. It's probably going to be highly toxic, as is your mattress that you sleep on every night, etc. So we're trying to think of our material world in much more broad ways. And I think, if you just think fashion is frivolous, no, it's not. Fashion touches everything. It touches our interior world. it touches our choices around the cars that we buy and the materials we sit inside in the car. So interestingly, we have found year on year for the past 4 years, we have huge teams come to attend the Future Fabrics Expo from automotive companies. And we're hearing from our suppliers, right? So here's the thing, we look at this and we're going, oh my God, there's 8 people from Jaguar Land Rover came, from Material Innovation Team. And the same from another automotive and another one and another one. So it's so interesting that they find us as a place to explore potential materiality for the car interior, which, let's face it, if you've got an older car, you're sat in petrochemicals pretty much, unless you've got a vintage car with leather seats. Now, so you just stop and think about that. So materiality is in our, around us constantly. And it's super important. I think it's very exciting. I love these intersections. We've also, speaking to the world of footwear, I've been doing a footwear innovation hub for the past 2 years. We're going to grow that because, interestingly enough, there's a multitude of materials in your footwear. There's more than 30 materials just make up one trainer alone. So when you start to think about materials disassembling, it's mind-blowing. And actually, interestingly, quite a lot of parallels with car interiors insofar as multitude of materials are concerned. So, we've got huge challenges in the future. And then somebody else said to me, okay, so cars, what about aviation? Same, right? They've still got to make a seat for you. They've still got to clad the inside of the aircraft. Material choices, absolutely massively important. So that'll be, and I'm like, oh yeah, we need to speak to some of the aviation interior companies, that are tasked with kitting those out. So the reach and the impacts are huge, and therefore the challenges and opportunities are huge as well. So I would definitely reach out to anybody involved in investment community. That it's a very, very exciting space, our material world, and such challenges and major opportunities.
Amanda, you are amazing. Nina is amazing. The sustainable angle is amazing. The Future Fabrics Expo, I want everyone to come to next year. It is in London. It will be up on your website, I'm sure, early next year with dates. We're going to have another conversation then. I want everyone who's listening to just consider where you are right now when you're listening. What are you wearing? What do you feel it's made up of? Let's just start thinking, what have we put on our body today? What do we sleep in at night? What do we sit on during the day? And just start with that and see if we can make small changes in each of our lives to co-create the future that Amanda and Nina is showing us of what is possible.
Yes, I think that's an amazing takeaway. Looking into a material label, first of all, with your clothing, great idea, even if you're not really sure what's written inside it. And having a really good long think about what you're sitting on and what you're surrounding yourself with, and what's inside your car. They're really good questions, because I don't think anybody goes into a car showroom and goes, so what's this seat made of then? What's the carpet made of? We don't generally do that. Do we respond very much in a visual and tactile way? And so I think these messages, but it's interesting, isn't it? We talked earlier about food, the relationship between food and fiber. We do want to know what we're eating for very obvious, explicit reasons, but we don't necessarily want to know what we're putting on our bodies or sitting on. So I think if we apply the same kind of, hang on a minute, what's this made of? What's on that ingredient list? I think we go a long way to more awareness. And as you said, putting your money where your values are, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda.
Stephanie, I can't thank you enough. This has been absolutely joyful, and I can't wait to meet you in real life.